Alright guys, welcome to the first episode of how to make a rowboat out of pallets. And I'm already kind of contradicting the title by using these 2x4s, but these are old studs from my basement which flooded a couple years ago, and I think that using these still goes along with the same theme of using pallets in that most of this wood would just be thrown out anyways. Now I'm not going to lie, I definitely bit off more than I could chew. This was one of those dad's gonna build a deck projects. It was an impulse project. I was like, you know what, I want to build the boat. So I did that, but I did have a lot of fun, and I hope you guys have a lot of fun watching this. Now, because these 2x4s were originally used as studs, there's little nails and tacks in them that I need to take out, which is really just the price I pay for using free wood. Now I'll talk a little bit about the design for this rowboat. I wanted a 3 foot by 3 foot body of the boat with about a 2.5 foot long bow, which is the pointy part of the boat. So right now I'm just cutting out the 3 foot lengths from these 2x4s. Then I cut an angle that I soak-a-toe it out so that the triangle or the bow of the boat will connect to the 3 by 3 foot body of the boat. Now that little arrow at the bottom of the screen points to the angle we just cut out, and then at the tip of the bow I'm really just eyeballing the angle that I need to cut the boards at, and I choose to do that with a handsaw because I know that my table saw really can't handle that extreme of an angle, and I don't know what that angle is. So this is what we're left with, but instead of making 2 of these, I'm just going to rip all the 2x4s in half, which will save the boat weight, and it'll save me time from having to pry a bunch of 2x4s off my wall again. Now, as with most of my projects, I'm always learning from them, and one of the lessons I learned on this day was that sometimes whenever you try to cut a warped 2x4 on a straight table saw, it'll pinch the blade, and I did a lot of dangerous stuff to try to fix it, but I finally figured out if I just jammed a wedge in there, that would take the pressure off the blade so I could successfully cut the 2x4, and I was pretty proud that I figured that out. So here's the layout for the top and bottom of our boat. We're going to work on the top of our boat first because the bottom actually has to have an angle on the bow, or at least I think it does. I don't know. Anyways, I drilled the pilot hole and tossed a 2.5-inch screw into each corner, but I realized that that really wasn't super strong, so I cut some supports out of a spare 2x4 on the bandsaw. Now you can see I tossed a support in each of the 4 corners of our 3 by 3 foot box, and I'm just going to go ahead and drill those in from each side of the triangle. Now the tip of our bow also needs to be supported, and since I don't really know what I'm doing and I didn't calculate anything, I just had to mark it how I built it. Next, we're going to move on to the bottom of our boat, and more specifically the bow. I decided to put it at an angle. I'm not sure if I was actually supposed to do that or not, but I did. And it was very difficult to get the bottom of our triangle to match up correctly right here, and then at the bottom of the screen right here with our square. I basically just had to rasp it at a very weird angle. If any of you guys know how to cut an angle like that, feel free to throw it in the comments. you'll not only be helping me out, but you'll be helping other people out that may try to do this same project. So I'm going to go ahead and trace some supports in that same method that I used earlier on the tip of the bow and then at the bottom of the bow where the triangle connects to our square. Then it came time to join the top and the bottom of the boat together through some supports. I basically made a square from a 2x4, and these guys are about 13 inches high, and I cut out some of those 2x4 supports to make them nice and strong. I did use some wood glue, which was really going to only be effective whenever the grains of both pieces of wood were running the same direction, but I smeared it everywhere because the label said waterproof, and that made me feel better. Then it came time to attach the top of our boat to the bottom, and then I realized that the tips of the top and bottom bow are not lined up. They're pointing about 2 inches away from each other, which I'm pretty sure is not supposed to happen. Then I realized that if I flipped it over, I could get the tips to match up. However, that does mean that our boat is most likely going to be skewed to our left. So whether or not that's a problem, we'll find out whenever we put it in the water, but until then, we're going to try to make this thing look like a boat. And believe it or not, this thing is actually pretty strong. I'm about 160 pounds and it held me up with no problem. So that was a good sign. Now our bow still needs a lot of support, so I stuck another square piece of pine in between the two tips of our triangle and figured out what I needed to cut off to make it all flush. And I thought about using my bandsaw, but I realized that my bandsaw blade is like a group of nomads and it just likes to wander everywhere, so I decided to stay safe and use a block plane and a chisel. Now to make our bow a little bit stronger, I put a strip of wood from the bottom of our bow to about the middle of our square. And my thinking behind that was that whenever a stress would be applied to the tip of our bow, it wouldn't be solely on the joints. There'd be another strip of wood that would disperse some of that pressure. And I think it did a pretty good job of doing that. I also decided to add a little bit more support on the sides of the boat, especially with that knot to our left, and to make it symmetrical I put one on the right. I don't think it was needed necessarily because we saw how strong it was earlier, but I don't think it was going to hurt the boat at all. And I also put a support through the middle of the bottom of the boat. Then it came time to clean up all the edges. I didn't want anything to splinter, so I ran a file all over everything and then cleaned it up with sandpaper. So if you've made it this far, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're finding this just as enjoyable as I did. And if you guys have any questions, comments, or advice to give me, feel free to let me know in the comments. You won't only be helping me, but you'll be helping others as well. So thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next video.